The base has dropped on July 18th. Atlanta United wins 5-0 last night over the Houston Dynamo. There was a red card in the 6th minute that had a bit of an effect on the final outcome. We'll get into everything we can from the Bens last night, the other three matches around Major League Soccer. We'll look ahead to a couple of matches tonight. We'll look ahead to El Tráfico, where Zlatan is already talking. No real surprise there.
I'm shocked.
And we'll get into all of your reactions from all of it. Share your overreactions on an Overreaction Thursday. You can share underreactions and on-par reactions too, but those hashtags aren't as cool. Share them with us on Twitter at @SoccerDownHere, and we'll get into it all morning. Felipe Cardenas will also be joining us this morning at 10 o'clock. But for now, you're stuck with me, Jason Longshore, and John Nelson. And let's start with John's reactions to last night.
Well, you want to start with the moment that pretty much spun the match?
I asked for your reaction, so you can start wherever you would like.
Well, when you look at the red card from Elise, personally for me, I would have put him on an orange at that point. I would not have given him the red card. I think that Chris Penso kind of took the air out of the match when he did it and completely changed the tenor of what was going on. And also considering that my prediction had Ailey scoring a goal, it pretty much just took it and threw it in the garbage can. But
yeah, your prediction has nothing to do with this part, so you're going to have to leave that out.
No. But I don't think it was a justified red. I get it that you're not supposed to have contact with an official, but I think that it just literally changed the entire tenor of the match when it did go down. And I think that, and you had discussed it yesterday when I think it was on both shows actually, the pre-match and SDH yesterday morning, that you thought that once a goal or two was scored against Houston, that pretty much would break them, and it did. And once again, the woeish of woes when it comes to road play for Houston, popped up again. And you have to, at the same time, though, do not misunderstand. I'm not taking anything away from Atlanta United's performance about what went down. And I think that you need nights like this in a long season like this, when you have a bunch of different competitions going on and you're running on a short bench. Atlanta United, you got to see Joseph do what Joseph does. And there were a couple of moments where you just sit there, and there was, and we laugh at times on press row because of the ability that is shown in front of us. And it's not laughing in a comical sense. It's just you sit there and you think you've seen everything, and then Joseph makes a keeper sit on his pants. But there were tremendous moments you get to see, and we can break down players as we go throughout the show. But I think you need a night like this, but I also don't think that red was warranted at the time.
Let's get to the red card, and then we'll work backwards. Michael Parkhurst said this about it afterwards. He said, I heard that there was a bump. I didn't see anything, but you have to know who the referee is and be cautious. Wilmer Cabrera said very similar things afterwards as well. Albert Ellis was running hot before that, and let me go all the way back to that part, because that's something that I think has been lost in the shuffle a little bit. Right before that was the incident where Darlington Nagbe nearly put it in on his own goal. Brad Gazan was laid off his line to get to a low cross. It comes off of Nagbe, and from the replay you could tell that it went off of Tomas Martinez, who was also sliding in, and It's a goal kick. It was originally given as a corner, and I don't know where things changed. I couldn't tell in all of the chaos with it if the AR was on the headset and said something, or whatever. The referee asked for help. I'm not sure. I don't know how that played out, but it was originally shown as a corner, then it was given as a goal kick. Ellis was running hot from that point. Then you get the very soft foul with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez going down easily because, look, Leandro is a pro, and he's a savvy pro, and he knows that he's got Ellis running hot right there. You know you're going to get that call 9.5 times out of 10 in the middle third where a forward has got his arms out and makes contact with a defender. You go down. You keep frustrating him. Well, Ellis got frustrated. He kicked the ball away in the direction of the AR, which is a big no-no, and he got a yellow for that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The part where he got the red, and I wanted to get clarification because when he kicked the ball at the AR, some refs can give a red there, and you would completely be able to do that. And I'd have less of a problem with that, to be honest. But the red was given for the bump, for the contact that happened. And there's just not a lot there for me. There's not a lot there, and I do feel like Penso is walking towards him in the same action, and I think Ellis immediately is trying to make it clear that, hey, I'm not trying to get in your face, I'm not trying to bump you. I think there's enough of a potential, inadvertent bump there. I think there's enough to let it go, give him the orange card. Basically, you've already given him the yellow. It's so soft watching it back.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's what the game needed at that point. Now, by the letter of the law, sure. And again, you could have given him a red for kicking the ball at the AR. That's what I have the bigger problem with, to be perfectly honest. Because they're both kind of walking towards one another, and it's such a light bit of contact. And look, to be honest, if you want to go back, the Atlanta-Chicago match at home where Franco Escobar committed a tackle that I thought was a foul and sprinted into the referee's face, that was more aggressive, and that did not get a red card. There was a little bit of contact there too, but the mannerisms were far more aggressive. So, look, Wilmer Cabrera mentioned it after the match. Parkhurst mentions it. You got to know who the referee is, and that part is 100% true. You can't put yourself in that spot. And Albert Ellis, had to manage the situation better. He didn't. It's a red, and Houston is, after already being put behind the 8 ball by the lineup decisions, they're even further behind the 8 ball with the red card. And it took, 15 minutes or so for Atlanta, I think, to sort it out and see, okay, what's Houston going to do here? Where are our weak spots? How can we take advantage? And they did pretty quickly, and they got too quickly, and that's the big story here for me. Let's go back to the lineup.
Yes.
We talk a lot about rotation and keeping guys fresh because of the schedule, but this one to me feels like the most overthought lineup we've seen at the Benz since Jay Heap's next to last lineup with the New England Revolution, where he came in and had them in a different formation than they had played all season and just threw a bunch of different pieces at the table to see what happened, and New England looked a mess. You're going up against, if you are the Houston Dynamo and you're Wilmer Cabrera, and you have a trip to Toronto right after this, you're going up against a team that does not have an outside back available. You know they're going to have to do something different. They're going to have to play 3-5-2 like they did. They're going to have to play the 3-4-3. They're going to have to play 2 non-traditional outside backs and a 4-man back line. You know they're going to have to do something. And that's the game that you decide to rest 2 of your 4 attackers? 2 of your 4, of the potential best 4 attackers in the league? That's the game you're going to do it? I mean, logic? No. It's mind-blowing. When I saw this lineup, I think I laughed. I think my first reaction was to laugh because it's such a misstep from Wilmer Cabrera. And I like Wilmer Cabrera. I like what he's done with the Houston Dynamo. They have talent, but they don't have a lot of depth, and they've won an Open Cup under Cabrera. They have been around. They got to a Western Conference final under Cabrera. That's unbelievably impressive. And they've done that through the talents of an Albert Ellis, a Mauro Manotas, a Romel Kyoto, and now a Tomas Martinez. And in a game like this, where you've got 2 games on the trip, it felt like he tried to split the difference between the two, and you're not getting points that way. You're not getting points anywhere that way. You're definitely not getting points on the road. You have a second game on short rest against Toronto. You have a first game against a team that is scrambling to field a defense. Which game am I going to go with all of my attack against? It's just not a difficult decision. So, starts out with a gift in the lineup. Not necessarily a gift in the red card, but it's fortunate. And then you take advantage. And full credit to Atlanta United for being ruthless and putting the game away and not leaving any doubt about it. Houston's not a good enough defensive team to sit back and play 84 minutes with 10 men. They're just not. And they were punished for every little mistake that they made, and Atlanta took full advantage of everything that was on offer to them.
Was your laughter because there's a different kind of it. Was it the I can't believe he did that laugh, or the full blown comedic, what were you thinking laughter? I mean, was it more the incredulous one or the comedic one?
Both, because both are appropriate. I mean, why would you do this with the lineup if you're Wilmer Cabrera?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hilarious because it gives Atlanta a great opportunity. You know, you're dodging a bullet with them not playing their front four. We talked about it all day yesterday. Okay, how do you deal with that front four? You're going to have to figure out some 1v1 matchups, and the way the lineup was chosen, you're going into that potentially with Dion Pereira having to defend Albert Ellis. That's not a good matchup for Atlanta. It's not. And that was what was on paper after Atlanta submitted their lineup. Unbelievable. Because Houston knows that's one of the possibilities. We went through, I think, every possibility of the 500 available yesterday. Yeah. And that was one that was a pretty strong one. You were going to play Gressel on the right side as a wingback. You were going to play 3 center backs. And it was going to be Pereira or Merrim as a left wingback, and neither one is truly a left wingback. Pereira's gotten more experience playing it, and he got the call. But if you're Houston and you go with your normal front four against that, you got to be licking your chops about playing down the right side and letting Ellis run at Pereira all day. But you rest 2 guys. And then, I mean, it got worse. It's not even just that. You make the subs at halftime to bring on Kyoto and Juan David Cabezas. Why are you even worrying about bringing on a defensive midfielder at that point? You didn't pull one of your defensive midfielders. It wasn't like it was a like-for-like sub. Kyoto for McNamara was more of a like-for-like sub. You brought on you brought off Hairston, and you brought on Juan David Cabezas. So now you're going to get defensive, kind of, and try to reorganize? Okay, so that's just strange. But then, after the game's done, you bring on Mauro Manotas. Why? Let him have the day off. You already were planning on that. Why do you even bring him in for a few minutes? It's just, I really like Wilmer Cabrera, but I think sometimes he gets so hung up on rotation. And he thinks about rotation above and beyond everything else. And you're not going to win things that way. You're not going to win trophies that way on a regular basis. You're just not. He got an Open Cup last year, and that was a mega accomplishment for a team that, had a rough year. But in this one, you had an opportunity to put Atlanta to the sword with your lineup and go for it. It felt like the game that if you're the Houston Dynamo, your pregame speech is, they don't even have 18 players. They don't have any outside backs. Go punish them. Just go. Go play. Go attack. Go attack. And you didn't. Blown away. Absolutely blown away. And that's a huge help. None of that takes away from Atlanta's performance. Atlanta can only play the match that's in front of them. They don't get to pick the lineup for the opposition. And they took advantage of the mistakes that Wilmer Cabrera made. But the first 6 minutes, before you got to the red card, chaos. Absolute chaos. Houston had a great chance from Ellis. They had the chance that Nagby almost turned it on his own goal. Atlanta had a chance 15 seconds in. it was all over the place. I don't know where that game was headed if that red card didn't happen.
And it's just, you shake your head. And there are times when you're just, there's that, what are you doing? And you say that repeatedly. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
No, we got that. We got that. That's. Let's go back to the 6 minutes where you had 11v11. We know that Wilmer Cabrera screwed up the lineup. That's not a surprise at this point. Let's go back to that 6 minutes where it's 11v11.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because Houston has chances and Atlanta has chances. Like, it's an open game. I had no idea where that thing was going to go if you don't get that red card, because even with Kyoto and Manotas on the bench to start, Houston had 2 chances early. Atlanta had chances early. It was wide open. And I think Atlanta would have been the better team in the long run because of the lineup choices. I think Houston would have petered out, but you don't know. And if they get an early goal, then it changes everything. It was a little too chaotic for me in the early going.
And I think that's the good word about how to describe what's going on, because you're in your seat, or if you're not in your seat and you're holding things in your hands trying to get to your seat, that first 6 minutes you're missing a lot of action. But to the point I made when we came out, I just think that the red changed the entire tenor of everything. And then I know that a lot of fans were sitting there and thinking, okay, Houston's down to 10, they're going to bunker. Oh no, we're in this situation all over again where we're having to try to figure out a way to penetrate a team that's just going to sit back, and we're going to see all of the perimeter passing, and things aren't going to be fast enough for our own liking to try to penetrate things offensively for Atlanta United. But it didn't end up that way with 5 on the board by the time you were done.
Here's a couple of the goals from last night. Joseph Martinez, who had 3 chances, good chances in the first half. He was wide of the right post, wide of the left post, wide of the crossbar. Here is his first goal of the night from Joseph from the 92-90 game. A radio call and Mike Conti.
It's back-heeled by Hindman and then volleyed up in the air by Pereira, and it's going to bounce right to Darlington Nagbe, 35 yards from goal. Over to Gressel, dribbling forward, pitch to the penalty spot. Joseph header, score! Yet another beautiful team goal for Atlanta United, and the league's reigning MVP has his 14th of the year, 3-0.
So I'd kind of been joking with Mike at halftime that Joseph wasn't happy because he had so many chances that didn't have the goal. He was a little happier after that one, although the knee to the back might have taken away some of the happiness. Joseph took a pretty hard shot from Tyler Derrick. Nothing Derrick could do. He's got to try to play that. I think Joseph was very happy after his second goal.
So here now, outside of center circle, Remedi and Joseph combining as Atlanta United moves from right to left. Remedi between the circles now. Remedi, nice ball down the middle. Joseph on a breakaway, into the box, takes a touch, another touch, turns, shoots, score! Light it up for Joseph. It's 4-0 Atlanta United, and he's got yet another brace.
5-0 finish for Atlanta United, and we've got some audio from the locker room after the match. Let's first hear from Brandon Vasquez about something to take away from this one.
Yeah, we definitely needed the confidence back up. Last game was tough, but I think this is what we need, and it's only up from here.
Julian Gressel was our man of the match on the radio broadcast. 2 assists, and he gets the goal to seal it. He talked a little bit about playing out wide on the right again for the first time in a while.
I did, and I think it's no secret that I like it out there on that right side. And, it's just, a different spot, obviously, a different shape to our team. And obviously against 10 men, it got me into some really dangerous spots.
And Gressel also talked about his manager, Frank DeBoer.
We'll just kind of keep assessing it. Whatever decision, the coaching staff makes of kind of how we play and how we approach games, I'll stand behind that 100%.
With everybody getting healthy, you're going to have a lot of flexibility in terms of not just lineup and 18, but in formation, because you're going to have more options than you have had. And Darlington Nagbe talked about the 3-5-2 last night as well.
Yeah, I felt everyone was comfortable. We went over it just briefly the day before the game yesterday, and then being down defenders. We talked about playing 3 in the back, and I think just responding from last game. So I think the response and playing that formation helped us.
It's something that Frank DeBoer mentioned as well about they've worked on playing 3 in the back. They did early in the season, and obviously this team has some experience with it. Parkhurst, Robinson, and LGP have some experience playing 3 in the back. Gressel, obviously, as a right wing back, has some experience, so you can slip into it as needed against certain opponents and in situations like this one where you have players that are missing. A new player who did get his debut last night, and I almost hoped he was going to get a little bit more time, was Mo Adams, who came on and brought the team some energy in the second half. I think he got some energy as well, and he talked about the fans and making his Atlanta debut.
Oh, first the fans, man. I think it's different when you're playing for Atlanta than playing against Atlanta. You realize, you got the kind of a 12th man, so, as soon as I stepped on the field, it's a moment that I'll remember forever, definitely.
Mo could have been in Bridgeview, Illinois, and playing in front of just over 7,000 fans last night in a 2-2 draw where Romario Williams gets the late goal for the Columbus Crew to get the equalizer. Could have been there, but instead he was with 40,000 plus of his new friends in Atlanta. And as he was subbing on, this is what Frank DeBoer told him.
No, they just said, be yourself, play your game. One thing the coach said to me was enjoy it. And that's why we play the game, try to have as much fun as we can with it.
And Mo also talked a little bit about his background and some of the spots that he might be able to help this group.
I class myself as a versatile player, and whatever the coach asks, I'll do to the best of my ability, whether it's playing as a defensive mid or as a fullback. I think when you have the base of defending in the middle, it's easy to adjust to an outside back. And, growing up in England, I played that position multiple times.
Very important because Frank DeBoer mentioned that he saw Mo Adams as a player who could help him as a fullback. Mo says he's played it as a young player coming up in England, and also talks about the way that this team plays. It's a little bit easier to make that transition over to a fullback if it's what the team needs. And with the injuries that have happened and maybe will happen again, and with suspensions that have happened and will probably happen again at some point, that versatility that Mo Adams brings is very, very key. It's an Overreaction Thursday. We're taking your tweets throughout the show. We're going to take a quick break so you can fire off more tweets, and we're going to come back and get into the Twitter timeline right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Overreaction Thursday is live on the SDH network. July 18th, Atlanta 5-0 win over the Houston Dynamo last night. John, what are the peeps saying on the Twitters?
Elliot Beaven woke up early this morning and said he was surprised to see Mo Adams on the bench last night.
Well, there weren't really a ton of other options. And, I mean, Mo Adams has been playing, so it's, in training. It's not like, you needed to get fit or anything like that. The game worked out to where, hey, one, he's able to be there just in case you need him, and two, okay, well, now you can just play him and let him enjoy it and let him get out there. And you don't get a chance to train with the team, but getting out to introduce yourself to players on the field is pretty good. I mean, one of the funnier things that I saw, and I talked about it on the Southern Fried Soccer podcast, was after Joseph's second goal, Mo was on the field, and Mo kind of ran down to the celebration, and it's almost like he stayed to the outside of it for a second, and Joseph saw him and grabbed him and hugged him, and just the look on Joseph's face was kind of funny. Like, oh, wait a minute, who? Oh, yeah, you're the new guy. Okay,
You're the new guy.
Hey, come hang out with us. It's cool.
A new guy.
It was good times.
Chris Hutchison, along that same line with Joseph, says, Joseph arranging for Garcia to tackle his own keeper was sheer genius.
That was pretty good. Kevin Garcia had a rough night. The clip that I hope somebody will find, I was nearly just crying on the broadcast. Pitti at midfield, back heel nutmegged Garcia, playing at somebody out wide, and Garcia just trucked him because I don't think Kevin Garcia knew for 5 minutes after the thing happened that he had been nutmegged by a back heel from Pitti. It was unbelievable. I think the referee actually held up play, maybe because the VAR was laughing too hard to continue. Because there was nothing to look at. There was nothing to check. But he holds up the play, and I'm like, what's he doing? I mean, Garcia had no idea what just happened. He just kept running and just ran over Pitti. It was hilarious. And Joseph, look, we know he has this ability to make goalkeepers sit down on the job. He did it to Joe Bendick, and he did it here, and this one's even better because he doesn't just make the guy sit down. Kevin Garcia then trips over him. Just good times all the way around.
Katie Weaver with the obligatory, quote, did we learn anything from this tweet? After a W against a bad road team down their most dangerous player, a few takeaways. Gressel was sure finding joy on the right.
Oh,
Nagby goal.
Geez.
Hyman looked really solid. Good debut for Mo. Bad day for Mo's.
Bad day for Mo's, yes. There will be burritos had today, that's for sure. Julian on the right side, he remembered how to play it. That is a good thing. Julian had a really good night overall. Lots of space on the right side. So, again, you get 10 open play crosses. Gressel's going to pick out some good ones.
Yeah.
That's just an obscene number. It's crazy. But that's the way the game played out. I mean, Houston had to try to figure out what they wanted to take away, and they decided to take away the middle of the park more, so they gave the wings up. And it didn't work over time. So that's where you're at when you're with 10 men. And when you're with 10 men for that long, you can wear them down. It's different. I know a lot of people jump to the Red Bulls, but the Red Bulls are a different team, and they're a different defensive team than Houston on a good day, and Houston on a bad day with Kevin Garcia in and DeMarcus Beasley making a start for the first time in a while. That's not a team that can deal with playing with 10 for a long stretch of time. And then moving Tomas Martinez around from wing to wing and Tommy McNamara, that's not really a recipe for defensive success. It didn't work. It just didn't work. You can take some things away from it. I mean, I think more than anything, you take the positive vibe that you get out of this, and you run with it. You can't control what referees give you in games. You can't control what good fortune you get in games from lucky bounces or own goals or just weird things that can happen. Atlanta's had a lot of those go against them over the last month or so. This time, they get something that's fortunate, an early red card, and they just roll with it. And that's all you can do. You get some goals for Joseph. You always like to keep him happy. You get some goals from other places like Darlington Nagby, like Brandon Vasquez. It's a good night all the way around. I don't think you can take a lot out of it tactically because we just didn't get to see much. And I know that's something that a lot of people are taking out of it. And that's the one that I'm a little more little more like slow your roll just a bit on tactics because there really weren't much after 6 minutes.
Hudson at the Mile High 17. That was exactly what we all needed. I was in love with our 1 and 2 touch passing. I was happy to hear PT have his chant sung when he came on, then had a reminder why I love being a 17 so much when Adams was subbed on and so warmly welcomed. #Thursday Thoughts.
Yeah, that stuff's very cool. It's something that this fan base does a really good job with, and I think it's something that players recognize and players appreciate as well. So very cool to welcome Mo Adams. He also came on for Nagby, who played really well. I think that was part of the ovation as well. Did not hear Pitty's song sung for him when he came on. That's very cool to hear. I hope that continues. Thought he came on and was good. I thought the passing was good and quick, and I thought they switched points of attack really well, and that's something that they've needed to do a little bit more of in recent weeks. It's something they've kind of gotten away from a bit. I think the play of the day for me was the chip from LGP over the top that led to the second goal. It was not even – it wasn't a long diagonal. It wasn't a long pass. It was the classic kind of futsal flick where you just roll your foot under it and scoop it up, but it was over a long distance as Houston was trying to condense the field, and it worked, and it opened things up. It was very cool, very inventive from Leandro, and creates that second goal. The most important thing for me about the match in terms of flow was you got the opener, which was good. You immediately got a second, and when Houston started to kind of build into the game a little bit early in the second half and started to throw what they had into the match, what they had left, you get a third to shut that down pretty quick. They got goals when they needed to get goals, Atlanta, last night.
Well, and then you also had the moment from LGP where we've known about his long-distance diagonal passing, and he had another moment of those.
I had a bunch of those.
And obviously that means that there's problems for Atlanta United if LGP is having to do that long diagonal.
No, there's not.
Tony Jabroni had a couple of thoughts. Glad for the win. Thought number one. Still worried about our defense. Fortunate Houston didn't score in the first 6 minutes. Would have completely changed the game.
Yeah, I don't think we really got any answers about the defense because of the way it played out. You have to be worried with the injuries and with Escobar missing in this one. Look, you get lucky. The game that Escobar is missing for yellow card accumulation, you didn't need him. That's great. That's a great bonus. So you take that and run. It's probably going to happen again because of where he is in terms of yellow card accumulation. And you're going to still have the issues on the left side. So right now, to get 3 points and get them in this way with those issues, cool. Bonus.
Thought number two. Hope this turns a page for our offense and carries into our next game.
Yeah, so much of the attack is feel and mood and momentum and those sorts of things. And, yeah, it's hard to quantify. But when you're feeling confident and you've got that swagger, you're going to be more effective in the attack because you're going to be more free to try things and take some chances and play a little faster because you're feeling it. All those things will help you. So to get this kind of game in, absolutely. It's like, in a lot of ways, having that great training session where you're hitting every shot and doing everything you want to do the day before the game. This time you just got to do it in an actual match.
Third thought from Tony Jabroni is a question. 3-5-2 for Sunday. #Overreaction Thursday.
I mean, you're still in the same boat in a lot of ways, but you do have a little bit different decision here because you get Escobar back into the mix. So do you want to go with the same group roughly, but give maybe Parkhurst a day off and bring Escobar in to a center back role? You could do that. He could play on the right side, and Gressel could play centrally if you want. I know a lot of people are going to yell about that, and it's completely understandable, but that's a possibility. I think another possibility is Escobar on the left. and you could go with the same group and play Escobar on the left. I think the questions about it are, how's Parkhurst feeling? Is he ready to go again on Sunday? Because he's played a lot of minutes lately. Is he ready to go on Sunday? If he is, then you can go 3 in the back in that formation. If he's not, then do you want to stay 3 in the back? You're going to have to bring in Escobar there, and you're still going to go Pereira on the left. What does DC do tonight? And that's a question for me. I want to see if they go all in tonight, and then you start thinking, well, maybe they're going to rotate some on Sunday. Or do they hold people out tonight? Do they sit a Paul Arriola tonight? Because then you know he's playing on Sunday. It's a little hard to say now. Let's reconvene tomorrow on the show and reassess after DC and Cincinnati tonight. But I think you're probably leaning that way at the moment because of the issues on the left side. It's just easier if you're playing anybody who is not a traditional left-sided player. It's a little bit easier to have a third center back and have a little bit more of a security blanket. Think back to the way that Frank played it with the 3-4-3 when Escobar was hurt. He did that for more security defensively because he didn't feel like he had a right back, a true right back. So now it's the other side. You don't have a true left back. I think he's going to go to 3 in the back if everything else is good. Now, how that looks is the question. And is it 3-5-2 again? Is it 3-4-3? Is it something else? That's what'll be interesting to see. But it's a little early to tell. I want to see what DC does tonight against Cincinnati.
Joe Boss, hashtag Thursday Thoughts. Winning cures all. Hashtag Dynamo are just bad. Not going to take much more from the match, but Atlanta United needed this. Let's see what happens Sunday, then we can reevaluate.
The Dynamo are not bad. They shouldn't be this bad, but man, Wilmer Cabrera makes some weird decisions. Just strange. He rotates too much, and then this was a game where you absolutely do not rotate, especially in the attack. And it's going to cost him. I mean, there's no guarantee he would have gotten 3 points out of it. There's no guarantee at all that would have happened, but you're going up against a team that's struggling defensively. You go for that with your attack. You don't rest players. That's the part that just baffles me. So that helped. Houston on the road is not good in general, but man, they left a lot on the table in terms of that lineup.
The Colonel. Good morning, Colonel. That was 90 minutes of fun. Call it soft if you will. I feel like Dusty Rhodes there, if you will. But let's not start bending the rules on touching the ref. Could also have been a second yellow for dissent. Hashtag Overreaction Thursday.
Yeah, it could have, and that's what I thought it was initially. Either way is soft, in my opinion. Either way is just unnecessary in the 6th minute. Not to say that it's wrong, and it's not something that would ever get overturned on an appeal, but yeah, it's a little soft. We do have an update. Thanks, ATL UTD fan number 1. Ben Olsen yesterday speaking to Stephen Goff of the Washington Post about lineup approach for the 2 matches over 4 days on turf. Quote, "We will go all in on this one, Cincinnati, and then we'll adjust the Atlanta game if we need to." So there you go. Which makes sense. I mean, that's the way I would play it. If you've got Cincinnati and Atlanta back-to-back on the road, what's more likely to get 3 points on the road? Cincinnati. You're going to go for the first one. And then if you get anything out of the second one, cool, it's a bonus. So, yeah, that does give you a little more flexibility if that's how it actually plays out. Gives you a little more flexibility because, okay, they might rest some players. They might play some guys who don't have as much experience. It can't hurt you as much. But you still have to think about your group as well and what's going to give you the most security, because even new faces can hurt you if you're not structured appropriately. So I would say 3-5-2 would probably be the safest thing and just slot in Escobar on the left. But so much of that revolves around Parkhurst and where he is at going into Sunday.
I'm going to preface Daniel Price this morning with Daniel Price after the match last night.
Okay.
After the match last night, he started Overreaction Thursday by saying, "I have become one with the beer. I was born by it, molded by it, and covered in it."
That's an overreaction, yes. You don't want to become one with the deer. That can be bad.
Yeah. And then this morning, my personal feelings toward the red card. I like how the ref was easy to show a card in general. Most of the time, refs this season have been really reluctant to pull anything. With this reluctance, especially against Atlanta, it has cost us multiple players to injury. And then he's got a second paragraph.
Yeah. There's differences, though, for me in where I want referees to be reluctant and not reluctant. Honestly, I want more yellow cards on fouls and physical plays, not on dissent and arguing. Although that is an issue as well that needs to be handled better, and I think referees have set a very high line on, or high bar on, what is over the line on dissent, and that's just something that's evolved over time. Like, we're never going to get back to the days where only the captain could speak to the referee. That's not happening. But, yeah, there's a lot of conversation allowed for referees. My issue with cards, though, isn't those situations as much as it is the fouls and tactical fouls and persistent infringement fouls and persistent hard fouls on skill players. Those are the ones that frustrate me. So this is like a whole different category that I honestly don't think if the game played out, there was just the yellow there and a talking to, there was no red, I don't think we would really be talking about it saying, oh man, it should have been a red card, that's a game changer. We wouldn't be talking about it like we talked about the Escobar yellow in Seattle. We wouldn't be talking about it like we did about other cards we've seen this season. I think it just would have been lost in the game.
And then Daniel's on par reaction. While it's unfortunate that it really affected the game, I want cards to gain control of the game early. Atlanta needed this win to build confidence. At the end of the day, Ailey should have been better. It happens.
Yeah, for sure, but the game wasn't out of control. That's the issue with it for me. Is it's not that you needed to throw a card there to get the game under control. You could have gotten away with not showing a card there, and by showing that red card, you changed the game. The game became about the red card. That's not what you want from a referee. You want to control a game with yellow cards. You're not controlling a game with a red card. That's not controlling a game. It's red card. No referee wants the game to be decided 11-10, especially for 84 minutes. Think back to Mark Geiger in England-Colombia. I mean, he got out of there at 11v11. That's an accomplishment. There's other games where you're able to get out of it 11v11. It's a huge accomplishment. If you're able to finish both teams with 11 players on the field and nobody gets seriously hurt, cool. You did your job as a referee. This one, you didn't need to go red in the 6th minute. So I get what you're saying, Daniel, but I think you're saying it for the wrong reasons in this case, because the game didn't need that control, and red cards are not controlling games. Yellows can control games. Even better, referees manage games with their voice, with their personality. They use man management skills to control a game, and they don't have to go to cards. So then you don't get into accumulation issues. Then you don't get cheap yellows that affect you down the road. I think Penso didn't manage the whole situation well to begin with, because you had Ellis running hot for about a minute. You knew he was running hot. I don't think you had to go red there. It's great for Atlanta, and it's a wonderful thing after there's been some bad calls that have affected Atlanta this season. They generally do even themselves out. But no, I don't think a red card there is controlling anything. I think it's changing everything.
And for me, and this is what happens, I guess, when I sit between Jarrett and Felipe, I just thought that Penso had a little bit of Country Joe West in him in that first 6 or 7 minutes that led to the reaction that he gave when he gave the yellow and then the red to Ailey.
I think you could have left it as a yellow and then had a long talking to and been okay. I really think that would have been the best way to handle it. But Atlanta benefits, and then they punish Houston for the mistake, because it is a mistake. Albert Ellis put himself in the situation, and I want to make that clear. Like, I don't like the red card, but he didn't have to put himself in that spot, and he did.
Daniel also had Gressel as man of the match, a great game filling in for Escobar. Shiva on Julian. In an interview with Felipe over at The Athletic, Julian expressed his comfort and strength as a right wingback. We saw how good he was yesterday. If FDB cannot find an effective place for Julian in his system, do you see him staying with the team next year?
That's a very early thing to jump to, because you're going to have a lot of players that you're thinking about for next year because of where contracts are, because it's after the third year of the team, and you've got a lot of guys that are probably either going to be out of contract or coming up to options, and there's going to have to be decisions made, and Julian's one of them, who I believe has been renegotiating a new deal. Right wing back means you're going to play in either a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3, and I don't think you can do that just for Julian in this team. I think you do have to think about the overall group, and I know a lot of talk is you have to play 3-5-2 now. You have to play 3-5-2. Well, here's the thing about the 3-5-2. All right, you go with your three center backs, and those three would be your first choice, I think, who played last night. Gressel would be on the right side. Ultimately, Bello would be on the left side if he's healthy. If he's not, then it's probably Escobar over there. So, okay. If it's Bello, let's say Bello's healthy, then you've got to make one decision about, do you want Escobar as a center back or do you want Parkhurst as a center back? That's one. You got to make a decision about your midfield between, do you want to play a 10 or do you want to play three central midfielders? You played three central midfielders last night. You played Lorenowitz behind Nagbe and Hindman. Do you want to play two of them with a true number 10 in front, or do you want to play the way you played last night? Either way, you're going to be, last night you sat Eric Remedi in a three central midfielder setup. Also not in the team last night, you played Brandon Vasquez up top, which was more of a true two striker look, although Vasquez was very mobile. You didn't start Pitti and Remedi in last night's group, or Justin Merrim. You started Dion Pereira, but I think if you have other options on the left side, he wouldn't start. Barco, Villalba are also in that mix that would not start. Are you sacrificing all of that for a shape to accommodate one player? And that's the question you have to make, because it's not easy. That's why I don't think this is the 11 you play, this is the only way you play, throw everything else out the book, and this is just what you go with. That's an overreaction to me, especially going up against 10 men. I think it's an option, and I think it's something that you always have to keep in your bag, and I think it's something that against certain opponents, yes, you want to exploit that. But that's a lot of players you're leaving out to go 3-5-2 in whatever fashion you do it, and that's something you have to consider as well. A lot of players that I think you need in the team. I do think Ezequiel Barco is walking right back into the team when he's healthy. I think he needs to. And you're going to have to figure out where he's going to be most effective. In a 3-5-2, it's either going to be as a second forward, which would mean Vasquez would sit, or as a 10, which would mean you're playing two central midfielders and you're going to be a little more adventurous there. And that's the two places he can play in the 3-5-2. That's it. Pitti, same two places. Merrim, you don't really have an easy spot for Merrim or Pereira because they're best out wide as not wing backs, as wingers or as wide forwards. Merrim, you might be able to get away with playing as a second forward or a number 10, but you're already dealing with Barco and Pitti in those spots. It's not easy. And that's why it's just think big picture here. This is why you want to have these issues. This is why when you watch a team like Manchester City, you see them play different shape, different lineup, different groupings, different strategies even when they play different opponents. That's how you deal with having a team at this level with this type of competition for spots. It's not just, oh, that's the formation, that's the 11, everybody else go sit down and take a seat. I don't think that's the way to win in this league at this point, not with this kind of schedule.
No, and you made my next point for me, is that you've always said and maintained not to get wrapped up in formation when you have players out there for any 11, but the way that Atlanta United wants to do things winning multiple trophies, and schedule compression. We get into all those different things that lead toward that. You're going to need 20 guys to be available in certain situations for certain formations. If injuries happen, all of these different things, you need that depth to be available to play different places, multiple formations, different matchups, all this kind of stuff to get you into those positions that you want as a franchise. Last night was just one of those. To me, it was where you had a roster where you had guys who were doing things out of necessity, one way or the other, injury, what have you. But that's one of the examples of what you can do with the roster that you have in a given situation in an evening where you needed them to do certain things that were different and outside of a skill set.
You have a lot of flexibility, and I think you want to give yourself the opportunity to use as much of it. And that's the question when it comes to a Julian Gressel. He is very effective out wide on the right in a wingback role. I think he's more effective there than as a right winger or as a central midfielder. Do you want to make the shape accommodate that at the expense of a lot of other options? Any shape you choose, any lineup you choose, you're going to have a lot of options that are left out or moved into a different role to accommodate the greater good. And you've got to find that balance. That's why it's not easy, and that's why this isn't FIFA video game or Football Manager. It's complicated, and it's going to be complicated when everyone's healthy. It's complicated right now because everyone isn't healthy. It's just complicated. That's how it goes. Let's take a break, come back, a couple more tweets before we get Felipe Cardenas on the line at the top of the hour. Be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Wrapping up hour number 1 with a couple more of your reactions. Over, under, on par. All are possible. All are available. You can tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. What else do we have, John?
Tafka on the Elise red card. It's deserved. As you said, Jason, the kicking of the ball at the AR is red card worthy, but he escaped.
But that's not what it was given for. That hold up. That's not what they gave it for. I wanted to clarify that because I thought that could be what they gave it for. I'd have less of an issue with that, but that's not what they gave it for. That's very important.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Kicking of the ball is red card worthy, but he escaped. The thin ice cracked seconds later when he made contact with the ref. Light or slight, anything at that point is the nail in the coffin.
Well, then Franco Escobar should have been red carded against Chicago, and people would have been irate. That's the problem, is that when you see something just a few games before, then, consistency would be nice. At that stage of the match, as I've said a million times here today, and I'll continue to say it, you could have gotten away with a yellow card and a stern talking to once you decided not to give the red for kicking the ball at the AR. And I thought he kicked the ball at the AR. If he had shown a straight red for that, I'd have far less of an issue for it, because there's nothing to justify that. There's nothing soft about that. He didn't. He opted to give that a yellow, and he gave the red for the slight bump after that, which I think is inadvertent. I really do. I think Penso's walking towards Elise as well, and that adds to it. You could have gotten away with a yellow, and we would not be talking about it today. That's the judge of it for me in those types of situations where it's a judgment call. If you don't give red there, nobody's flying off the handle. You do, it feels a little out of place. That's the issue, because, look, these things, the rule book, as Geiger told a class one time, and it's something that sticks with me, the rule book, when you actually hold the laws of the game, you can bend it, you can manipulate it, you can bend it to the right, you can bend it to the left. It's all about the actual match you're in, not being a stickler on the laws of the game at times. You want to manage the match. I think that's an element of soccer that maybe basketball is the only other one that really hits that level, where there's a lot of subjective calls, there's a lot of judgment in the game, and the way the referee manages the game is as much as the actual on paper black and white laws of the game. I think he could have gotten out of there with a yellow, and we wouldn't be talking about it today.
Daniel also wants to know where the Josie was that was against Red Bulls last night. Where was that Josie against Mexico in the men's national team? What a disgusting goal last night against Red Bulls.
Josie's a beast, but Josie, at this point in his career, is a far more inconsistent beast. And that's a problem, I mean, for any striker at the top level, because you just can't count on him in the same way that with Josie you used to be able to. And he's always had some inconsistency issues, but yeah, the thing is, that Josie from last night that gives Toronto that goal, that's why he is the best striker for the national team right now. That's why he is starting in games against Mexico in Gold Cup finals right now, because he can do that. He just doesn't do it all the time. But there's nobody else who is doing that sort of thing right now. There isn't. And that's why Josie keeps getting turned to. It's up to Josh Sargent, it's up to Sebastian Soto, young players, to show, hey, I'm doing this, and hey, I can do it on a more consistent basis. I need this time too. It's up to them to do that. Josie Zardes, I think, has had his opportunities, and he's shown that he's a backup. And that's okay. That doesn't mean Josie Zardes is a colossal failure. That's the thing that blows my mind sometimes in conversation about American soccer. Just because you're not one of the best 5 players on the national team doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you're not quite at that level. Josie's a better striker than Josie Zardes. That's okay. Josie Zardes is a player who can make large amounts of money in Major League Soccer and score lots of goals. Not a bad place to be as a professional. Not everybody can play on the national team every single time. Doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. Let's take a break. Let's come back. Felipe Cardenas will join us. He was on hand at the Benz. We'll get his thoughts, and we will be back right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Soccer Down Here. Overreaction Thursday. Atlanta United 5-0 over the Houston Dynamo. 10-man Houston Dynamo for 84 minutes. There was a great return last night to the Benz. Good to see Felipe Cardenas for the first time in a while. Been on Mexico duty, traveling the country in the Gold Cup. How was the Mexico beat, Felipe?
Hey, guys. Yeah, happy to be back. It was great to be back in the Benz in front of the home fans and kind of get back to MLS coverage. But Mexico coverage is great, honestly. Being part of a good Gold Cup. I think that was what surprised a lot of people, that the level of play continued to get better throughout the tournament. A lot of surprise teams. The pace of play was good. And Mexico, I've told a few colleagues along the way since I've been back that they're a fun team to be around. They're young. They have a lot of creative players. They've really taken to Tata Martino as a manager, as a figurehead, as a leader, just kind of in the locker room presence that he brings, but also obviously tactically, which I wrote a lot about because even the Mexican press that traveled with the team throughout the Gold Cup, had to admit, I think they have trouble admitting when things are going well, but they saw a team that quickly really grabbed hold and embraced, Tata Martino's philosophy and footballing ideology of always attacking, of mentally being the team that imposes themselves on their opponents. And that takes a lot of, that's really a mentality play, and it's about character and belief. And when we would run into the players in the mix zone and ask them about playing a certain way, they were all drinking the Kool-Aid. They understand that there are risks involved to that type of and that style of play, but they enjoy it, and they can see that the opponents tend to backpedal. Even the tight matches, I think you could still see Mexico really sticking to their guns. And it's a process. So it was great to see. It was great to be around kind of the international press as well. And I got a little bit of U.S. men's national team access as well. Stopped Christian Pulisic in the mix zone. He was very gracious. And we talked a lot that was before the final. So I asked him a lot about just kind of being the number 10, being a marked man. Was he ready for that type of pressure, in a big kind of rivalry match? And he said he was, and I think he was in the first half, but I think we noticed with some adjustments that, Edson Alvarez really, really kind of bottled up Christian in that second half. But in the end, great experience.
What was it like, hanging out with Tata? I mean, you mentioned the L3 duty. I imagine that there were moments where, at least early on, I'm sure there was a double take of, oh, hey, wait a minute, I remember you.
There was, yeah. It started in Denver. I think he a lot of the local press, he saw us, when he was here for the Venezuela friendly, and that was good, to kind of see his reaction to all of us that covered Atlanta United while he was here. But I think then when he saw me in Denver, he was surprised. Like he did kind of like a, hey, oh, hi. And I just got I could feel the entire room just like looking at me, like, who is this guy? Like, why, because he's serious with the rest of the press. It's not that he's not serious with me, but he kind of opens his reaction, his I guess his delivery changes a little bit. And so he did that throughout from Denver to Charlotte to Chicago. Every time it was like, oh, hi. And so I would get some of that afterwards, like, oh, how does he know you? Or he recognized you? Or, and I had to get into the story, like, well, yeah, like I covered Atlanta United while he was there. And it kind of made sense to everybody. Because he knows now, he knows who the Mexican journalists are, but it's very, it's a different relationship, right? Like they're still getting used to each other, and I think he's kind of constantly having to tread water, if you will, like in those press conferences. They're a lot of the guys and the men and women that are covering the Mexican national team are looking to poke holes. Are very well versed and very prepared and very professional, but they're there to, especially the TV guys, they're there to get a headline. So, he knows that, and I thought he was very aware of it. And obviously, when I'm in there, a lot of times I'm after a story. Like I have a story in my head, a concept in my head, and so I tend to ask a question that may be a little bit off the radar of what is happening immediately, post game or pre game. And so, yeah, I think he always enjoyed that type of question where you get into tactics or maybe what a player does well, or the future, the project, if you will.
So let's get into last night a little bit, because there was a very interesting incident in the 6th minute with Albert Ellis's red card. And we were talking about it before we came back alive. It's not something that you really think of when you think of Ellis kind of making those types of mistakes and running hot like that. What did Wilmer Cabrera tell you after the match?
Yeah, well, first of all, I agreed. I had the opportunity to speak with him the night before the match at their team hotel, and I really enjoyed my conversation with him. He's very down to earth, a positive guy, and very self-aware of his future, of his talent. And the team and the club that he plays for, and kind of this bad stretch that they're on after starting so well. And so I was surprised, because my first impression of him was the guy that I spoke to on Tuesday night, the guy that had just kind of come in from rocking the scooter around downtown Atlanta with his teammates, and I think they were just, he's still a young player, and I think the occasion, they knew that last night was a big match for them, and that can weigh on some players, especially a player like Albert that is expected to really carry the weight of the attacking weight and the responsibility of that team, especially with his strike partner was on the bench. And so I think there was a lot on him, and you saw the first opportunity that he had a 1v1 against Parkhurst, he just easily took him to the end line, and that should have been 1-0 Houston. And so he's extremely dangerous. But I think, to your point, Jason, what we were talking about before we jumped on the air, I think he was just a little amped up. I think it was kind of not that the moment was too big for him. I think just some players kind of go in hot into big matches. He was frustrated with the referee. I think we learned about the history of Chris Penso and the Houston Dynamo post game. At least I did, from what Cabrera told me, when he said that he had spoken to the team before they went out on the field, that this was a referee that did not have a good history with the Houston Dynamo, that in the last game that he refereed, he sent off 3 players and sent off Cabrera inside the tunnel after the game, that he's a referee that likes to give out red cards. This is what Cabrera said. And it's funny, because even though Cabrera should have done that and should have had that talk, that can also kind of sit in a player's head and a team's head and know, like, this ref does not like us. And your fuse is just cut short immediately. You get one wrong decision, and if you're not careful, you can overreact. And I think he did. And so, I agree that it was soft. I think you can look back and say, yes, it was somewhat petulant from Albert, but I would just love to see a referee that is cooler in that moment. And I really do believe that'll earn the respect of the 22 players on the pitch from a referee that's like, watch it, guy. One more, you step a little closer, you breathe a little harder, and you're done. And I think that really would set the tone for the match from a referee's perspective. The players understand that, okay, this is the type of match, the type of referee that we have. Instead, it just completely changed the game, 6 minutes into the match. So Cabrera was very honest. I think it's not ironic, but coincidental that we're coming from, PT Martinez and Frank de Boer exchanging, words with the press about their performances. And now we have a manager that, I guess the difference here is that he was adamant about saying that I spoke to him about this before. I spoke to the team. But he was clear in saying that it was a childish, mistake from Alberth. He lacked maturity, and that he had to be accountable for his actions. And so, I was there outside the Houston Dynamo locker room last night to speak with the players and the coaches. No players spoke. Alberth, at least, was one of the first players out of the locker room, visibly dejected. It wasn't a guy that was like, no big deal. Like, he was walking slowly, looking down at his feet and, heading towards the bus. So this was a tough moment for him, I'm sure, individually. He's playing in a big market game, and he was out of the game 6 minutes in.
The game that Cabrera was talking about was last April against Kansas City. Or no, last August, sorry. 1-0 loss to Kansas City in August as Houston was chasing a playoff spot. Red card to Alejandro Fuenmayor in the 15th minute for a collision with Gianluca Busio. Cabrera was sent off at halftime for, quote, irresponsible behavior. Darwin Seren was sent off in stoppage time for a hands to the face call in kind of a coming together of both teams. And then Ellis was sent off in that as well for supposedly a shoulder to the back of Felipe Gutierrez. So 3 reds and the manager sent off, 6 yellows outside of that. That's the game that Cabrera was worried about when it came to Penso. And, well, I mean, it didn't exactly play out that way, but Cabrera's concern, was well-founded.
It certainly was, and I think that is very typical. There are teams feel that there are certain referees that just they're not compatible with. Yeah. And there are other times where they're like, oh, we like this ref. He does a good job for us or for both teams. And so there's a history here with Chris Penso. Now, Cabrera also mentioned that, Alberth Ellis, he set himself up essentially. I didn't tweet 100%. This, but by kicking the ball away, that's where Cabrera started. He's like, as soon as you do that, you're opening yourself up to this type of reaction from the referee. And then this is how he said it. He said, okay, yeah, he got close. So that to me tells me that he thinks that was somewhat, a soft bump, like the everyone's like, oh, he bumped the referee. And like, trust me, we've seen players in leagues around the world bump referees. Right. They've done they've done the classic headbutt to referees. Yes. They get too close. This was not that. And I think that's what Cabrera was telling me. That's how he said. He's like, okay, yes, I understand. He got close, but that's why he wanted to set it up before. He's like, but he opened himself up to that type of reaction from the referee by kicking the ball away, by not maintaining his composure when the referee gave him the yellow card. And so, yeah, Cabrera was dejected as well. He apologized to the city of Houston. He apologized to the fans. He said that this was a very tough moment for him or for the team and for the club. And one tactical thing that I like to bring up, because I think we all were talking about it, was his starting 11. I asked him about, what was your plan with the starting 11? Were you playing for a second half push? And he said, yes, that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to get into halftime 0-0. And in the second half, I was going to bring on Manotas. I was going to bring on a fresh Kyoto, and we were going to go after it. And he said it just all fell apart 6 minutes into the game.
But if you're Atlanta United, Felipe, you sit there and you take full advantage of the situation. You end up with a squad that only had 16 names on it, and one of those names was Brendan Moore, the backup for Brad Gazan. You get Mo Adams gets minutes and is welcomed into the side, and you get to sit players. So I think that you look at what Atlanta United ended up with in this situation, taking full advantage of it. And it was a feel-good night for a bunch of different reasons, both with what you did, putting the ball in the back of the net, getting Joseph with a couple, having Brandon Vasquez get one, Nagbe gets one, Gressel gets one, all of the different ways that Atlanta United puts the ball in the net against Houston, still horrific on the road over the last handful of years. And then what you're able to not do. You're not playing certain guys, only giving certain minutes to swap. So I think that when you look at things from the Atlanta United perspective, it couldn't have gone any better for them on another short week and a bunch of games that are happening in a month's time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I still think that it's difficult to take anything away from this type of match, especially from like a tactical perspective, a deep dive into tactics. Did DeBoer get it right? How did the players react? It's difficult because I think, obviously the playing with 10 men for 85 minutes, that's no one wants to do that. Now, I think for Atlanta United, the one thing is that there were certain changes to the lineup that made the entire team just look more comfortable. And obviously we can start with Julian Gressel playing wide. You could see it, John and I, we talked about in the press box. This is what I said. I felt like Julian was even literally strutting up and down the flank. That was how high his confidence was. He felt comfortable. He was taking he was risk taking, with his balls, with his first time balls, changing it up from the early ball to kind of like what we call the Latin cross, the death ball into the box that just freezes defenders. And he was consistently looking for Joseph Martinez, which is, that partnership, that connection that was so successful and so efficient and effective in 2018. And so I think that also allowed the entire team to just feel more comfortable on the pitch when you have a player that's a wide player like Julian and that knows how to play that position so well. Everything else just kind of comes together. The midfielders have more space. The back three feels like they can come up and creep up a little bit more. Everyone is more confident, and Dion Pereira as well did well on his side, kind of staying wide and anywhere on the pitch. Like he was smart enough to understand the shape of the team. But still, I think this is just like one of those games that Atlanta United, they just needed. They just needed to win. It helps tremendously that it's a blowout, a 5-0 win, with guys getting on the score sheet once, twice, multiple assists. Darlington scoring his first goal. Like, just from a confidence standpoint, it was very important for them. The fact that the lineup was the one that we saw, I think clearly says that they see the DC United match on Sunday as the much more important match of the week. But Frank DeBoer has to be, very pleased with the result. I know he mentioned post game that, they played against 10 men before and didn't get the result in New York, but I think that's a much bigger, that's a totally different story. We're talking about the New York Red Bulls as a club, as the system that they play in, versus the Houston Dynamo, that when they lose their best player, everything just falls apart. And so quickly, that's what Cabrera told me as well. He was like, we just didn't know how to defend down a man. We had 7 defenders that didn't know they didn't stay compact. We got spread out. And that's obviously something that the Red Bulls did not do when they played Atlanta. So not much to take away, but at the same time, if I'm an Atlanta United player, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's as important as anything to take out of this is just that vibe that you have now going into the DC match. And I think you make a great point when you look at the lineup decisions here and you look at what that could mean for Sunday with Pity Martinez, with Justin Merrim, with Eric Remedi, all starting on the bench in this one. I don't think you're going to see any of the injured players return for Sunday. What does it look like on Sunday against a team that Ben Olsen has already said they're in Cincinnati tonight? They're going for that one, and then they'll see what they're going to do on Sunday once you turn it around on short rest.
Yeah, I mean this is what we call, in football and soccer, like you're playing against like a direct rival, right? You're playing against a rival that an opponent that in the standings becomes the team that you're battling against for first, second, third, whatever position it may be in the table. But this is one of those opponents that you have to get right, the tactics, the lineup, because a win, a draw, a loss is going to be magnified down the road potentially. And so, I think what we're going to see essentially the lineup that we saw in in Seattle, where minus Breck Shea, obviously, I think the left back spot that'll be Parkhurst most likely. Does it remain, a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1? That's going to be the big decision from Frank de Boer. The players, I think, are going to be the ones that we saw against Houston, where Marin will come back in, P.T. Martinez comes back in, like you said, Eric Remedi comes back in, Parkhurst should slide back into that left back position potentially, or obviously Franco Escobar now is back from suspension, and if they remain kind of in a back three or a back five really, then is it Parkhurst that takes a seat on the bench to allow Franco to come in there? So I think from a personnel perspective, we know what Atlanta United will look like on Sunday. Tactically, that is the big decision for Frank de Boer. We know he likes to tinker. Okay, we know he likes to change his formations depending on the opponent, depending on the strength and weaknesses of the opponents. And this is an opportunity for him to maybe say, okay, now, what are our strengths as a team, as Atlanta United, based on what I just saw against Houston? I think there are some very clear-cut decisions that he made, and we'll go back to Gressel. Just putting Gressel there on wide right just changes the way that this team plays. It really does. I mean, I understand that Houston was no match for Atlanta United when they were down 10, but Julian Gressel, like I said in the piece that I wrote, like when he was playing there and playing at the level that he was playing at, last year, other managers would game plan around him. We would hear managers talk about, we need to stop Julian Gressel. We can't give him space on the right side. He can't not be allowed to, provide service to Joseph. And he was not shut down last night at all, and he just went to work. And so I think Ben Olsen will be looking at that. Will be concerned about that. And if he sees Julian Gressel back in the midfield central pockets with back to goal, he's going to feel pretty good about his tactics.
We didn't get a chance to talk to you last week with all the P.T. Martinez drama that ensued, first with the rumors out of Argentina about River Plate and then the interview with Argentine radio. What'd you make of all of it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't want to brush it aside. I don't want to seem like, oh, it was no big deal. I think the club, Atlanta United, Carlos Bocanegra came out and spoke to 92.9 The Game the morning after and did his part to try to calm everyone down and say that it was no big deal, that it was part of professional sports, and in a way he's right. This happens in sports all the time, but I think it does say something about the personality of a player like P.T. Martinez, the player that Atlanta United decided to bring over. Perhaps they weren't fully aware of the stature that he has in Argentina. Take away the trophies. This is a guy that is just extremely famous in Argentina.
I was watching hits on TSA, and you've got people walking behind the live hit outside of Monumental, like holding up a P.T. Martinez jersey, just walking back and forth to be on TV as they're talking about maybe P.T. Martinez returns to River.
Right. That's the impact that he has on River Plate, on Argentine football. Right now in the last 2-3 years, that was his contribution, and now he's considered a legend at one of the biggest clubs in the world. Let's just be honest. So I think for Atlanta United, it's a lesson learned, because you're bringing over a player with all this talent, with the trophies and the Player of the Year, moniker, just attached to it, but you're also getting a player with a ginormous personality, and a guy that's very outspoken. I think what I took away from it is the morning after when he spoke to us, he didn't hold back. He doubled down on what he said to the Argentine guys on Fox Sports Argentina. It wasn't like he was like, "Oh, I'm here because I would like to apologize." And he's like, "No, yeah, I was upset. He shouldn't do that. The manager should not go to the press before speaking to me. That made me very upset." And he, that to me shows a guy that is very sure of himself, very confident in his own skin. It's the second time, honestly, that since he's been in Atlanta United, that when he's in front of the camera, he speaks his mind. He does not bite his tongue. The last time it was when he went off about the press being in the locker room and MLS needing to, if they want to get serious and be a serious league, they need to control that. And so I think Atlanta United, from an organizational standpoint, this is something that they need to manage moving forward. I mentioned crisis management. I think I don't mean to sound over exaggerate it or anything like that, but this is what crisis management is all about. It's okay. You have a manager that's criticizing a player. You have a player that's going outside the bubble, and speaking to the media in another country, and then that causes headlines around the world, and now you need to manage it. So I'm sure they'll be doing that. I think that it obviously is an issue. It's an issue between the player and the manager. Can it be worked out? Of course. These guys are professionals. This is the first time that they probably had a disagreement with the manager, but I think it did show also. It gave us a glimpse, of what's happening inside the locker room from a footballing perspective. Okay, you have players that are unsure of the tactics that Frank de Boer is asking them to embrace. At the same time, they're saying, "Hey, he's our manager, and we need to adapt. I respect the manager; he's a great guy, but." And that but is a huge but. Like, let's just be honest. It's a very big issue for this team that they don't always feel comfortable, in the system. And to say that Frank wasn't going to change everything and that this team was going to play exactly the same way, which is what we heard when he was introduced. I think now we know that that's not the case, and that this is a process that the team is getting used to. That the culture shock was true. It is true. It's still happening. And PT Martinez is very much a figurehead here in the locker room, a guy that, even though I asked him, I said, "Were you speaking for the group when you essentially criticized his tactics?" He said, "No, that's my personal opinion." But I think it's safe to say he's a leader in that locker room now. Whether he ever wears the captain's armband, it doesn't matter. He's a guy that represents the locker room. He's well respected. And so when he says something, you have to listen and somewhat, sometimes read between the lines.
But we've mentioned the whole thing about artists, and you and I have gone back and forth about what artists are and what they're like. And with an artist that doesn't do paint by numbers and decides to sit there and look at lines as guideposts and options as opposed to the absolutes, you're going to look at things differently, and that's just how artists are wired these days.
Yeah, and that's how they've always been wired. I come from a creative background before, I started writing full time for The Athletic, which I still consider a creative job. It involves a lot of creative concepting, and I come from that background in advertising. I've worked with artists and designers and writers that don't follow the rules, and that's what made them special and talented. And our creative directors had to understand that and understand the personalities and get them to produce work that, for instance, a client in a very corporate setting that is used to following rules, all they know are rules and guidelines. How do you get creatives to produce work that fits in within the guidelines of a corporate client? And so that essentially, in a nutshell, is advertising. And I think the analogy and the metaphor here is that you have a Dutch manager that he's been very open about how he wants the team to play. It's much more cerebral. It's systematic. It involves a lot more anticipating of the game. He wants players to do exactly what they're supposed to do before they get off script. And so now you have a player like P.T. Martinez that he excels when he's jumping off script, when he's ad-libbing. And that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to play within a certain system or that, this system that Frank de Boer wants. I think he eventually will feel comfortable in it. But, when he was playing for Marcelo Gallardo, a very demanding manager, an extremely demanding manager, he had a role as well, but he had freedom, because Gallardo knew he had, what we call, and what you say in Spanish, un diferente, just a different type of player, a player that sometimes you can't corral, and that you need to be aligned mentally with him. It's all about, like, what are you saying to him? How are you saying it to him? What are you asking him to do? And I think that's the rub right now between P.T. Martinez and Frank de Boer. That's what I'm sure both of them are fully aware of, is how they each interpret what they're saying to each other and what they expect from each other.
Yeah, it's the classic thing that I think we see in all sports, where you want to treat everybody the same as a manager, but you know that in reality you don't. It's impossible to, and especially when you have a player like an artist like P.T. Martinez. Two things before we let you go, Felipe. I would love to get into that dichotomy that you just brought up about the Dutch system, the Dutch style, and that battle for control and order versus artistry, because it's something that's at the heart of the Dutch game, and I think we probably need a whole nother podcast to do that. So let's table that one and put it on the list.
Dutch football down here.
Yeah. But I also do want to ask you if you saw the nutmeg the backheel nutmeg on Kevin Garcia from P.T. Martinez, and if you laughed as much as I did.
I did not laugh. It was more of like a yeesh, like a yikes, like
yeah. Laugh might not be the right one. It was somewhere in between all of that, because it was one of the filthiest moves I've seen at the Benz.
Yeah, and I think we know the guy. Those of us that have been watching P.T. Martinez for several seasons now, like, he's a nutmeg merchant. He can get you if you're not careful. There are gifts, just like there are several gifts of him megging Jara, who now plays for DC United, who they'll see on Sunday. Yeah, he'll see him on Sunday, and I'm sure Jara right now is thinking about those megs in the Super Clásicos, because he has been immortalized in gift format now. So I think, but those are the things that we expect from PT. Like, they're in his bag of tricks. Even against St. Louis, I remember there was a time where he was back to goal. He had a big defender on him, and I was thinking, like, oh God, he's about to get cracked. He's about to get cracked. And he did this, like, it's hard to explain. It's kind of like he backheeled the ball towards the ground. Like, so he kind of like spiked it to the ground, which allowed him to spin and turn on the defender. It was seamless, but it was just like such a sick move, in a tight part of the field with the guy that was just, breathing down his neck. And so, that's P.T. Martinez. He has it. He knows when to use it. And I think going back to Atlanta United, that when it happens when every team is starting to like really feel confident and essentially like maybe even blowing out the other team, that's when they start to get cheeky. And that's, I think, what fans want to see from this team is those moments of flair from P.T. Martinez, Joseph Martinez, Julian Gressel, and I'm going to throw Emerson Hyndman in there as well. I think he is a player that has that touch, has the understanding of how to play with South American players. I remember asking him when he was first introduced, like, what is it like playing, you've been in training now with PT and Barca. Well, not Barca hasn't been there, but just like the South American players. And he's like, it's been fun. He brought up his background of playing soccer in Texas, playing with a lot of Latino players. And so I think that's going to surprise a lot of, the fans. And when you start to see that part of Emerson Hyndman's game, I think we saw some of it last night.
Yeah, I think Hyman's got a little Clint Dempsey on him, a little bit of that Texas swagger. So, Felipe, tease what you got coming up over at The Athletic. There's some great specials going on right now. If you are not already a subscriber, go ahead and take advantage.
Yeah, there's obviously the Athletic Atlanta is celebrating our 1-year anniversary. So big deal for us. And, right now there is a deal. Oh, gosh, you put me on the spot. I think it is the Athletic ATL anniversary. Yes, theathletic.com/ATL anniversary is the 40% promo link. So if you're not a subscriber, jump on it. You're going to get 40% off. And then from my perspective, I have a story. I'm working on another Atlanta United story today that I think people will be interested in. It kind of gets into a little bit of the homegrowns and the next generation of what that might look like. And then, my MLS stories from other teams are my to-do list is getting longer. So I have stories coming out that we'll probably work on in the upcoming week as well. So don't forget to follow me at Felipe Carr, and obviously follow The Athletic Soccer at The Athletic SCCR.
Thanks, Felipe. It's good to get you back into the rotation. We'll accommodate the formation to make sure you're in it every week.
Oh, please. I'm one of those. I'm a diferente. Don't put me in a box.
Definitely an artist.
Now he's going to go give an interview to Argentine radio.
Exactly.
Thanks, Felipe. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. Take care.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more of your tweets right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We've got all the reactions, all the tweets on an Overreaction Thursday coming up. Other action last night before we get into the timeline. The New York Red Bulls lost 3-1 in Toronto. That's a big win for Toronto. The big goal from Josie Altidore, a kind of ridiculous third goal to give up. But a big win when it comes to the Eastern Conference table because it puts Atlanta in second place. Other matches, the New England Revolution keep on trucking. They get Gustavo Bo into his debut. He gets a goal. Carlos Heel gets a goal and stacks up a bunch of points when it comes to my prize picks. So I was very happy with my prize picks last night, by the way. It was a good night. When you hit on the over on Carlos Heel, because they always undervalue him, when you hit on the over on Joseph Martinez, and you hit the under on Albert Ellis because of the red card, it's a good night. it's a good day. But New England is a team, man. You got to keep an eye on this New England Revolution team. We've talked Connor Casey effect. How about Il Brucio effect?
Hey, I mean, I started in fantasy. I started Carlos Hill and Agudelo last night, so I was quite pleased with that output.
Yeah,
I also started Joseph and captained him. I mean, I'm not,
and that could be really good depending on Sunday, but it's a good day. A better game in terms of just things to talk about than we thought it would be, but man, Chicago. They got a 2-1 lead, and then they just decided to park the bus, slash the tires, and it's Romario Williams, of all people, who jumps on top of the bus and ruins Chicago's day and gets an equalizer. Columbus is now a whopping 1-13-2 in their last 16 matches, and it's a 2-2 draw. But Chicago, we set it on the table for the Fire. You had 2 matches against the 2 worst teams in the Eastern Conference from Ohio. You needed 6 points. You got 1.
Blow up the Fire.
Sell everything you can sell, scrap it for parts, and get ready for 2020. That's all you can do at this point. There's no point in even continuing to have ambition about the playoffs at this point. If you get in, you're losing game 1 because you're going to be on the road. Blow it up. Blow it up, get what you can, and sorry, Bastian, that this is going to be your last season, but there's nothing there for this team right now. And look, Nelson Rodriguez said it before the game. He had a media roundtable and basically threw out the open for business sign and said everybody in the league knows it. Well, it might be a different kind of sale going on right now. It might be full liquidation of the Chicago Fire roster.
Everything must go.
Yes. You have the people in silly costumes on the street waving signs. That is the Chicago Fire right now.
So Veljko Paunovic is Crazy Eddie?
No. Veljko Paunovic is in the hot dog costume on the side of the street, like holding the sign, everything must go.
So like the Justin Timberlake character in Saturday Night Live sketches.
No. He's not singing because he's not singing. He's just on the side of the street.
Gotta get down to Bridgeview now.
Flipping the sign around and stuff. That's all he's doing.
Oh, so he's sign flipper guy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just not good right now. And
it's very bad for Chicago. They're going to have to make some moves because it's a bad look. Couple other things before we get back into the timeline. So there's some issues going on around the El Tráfico on a couple of fronts. So that's Friday night. There was a lot of talk yesterday about multiple LAFC supporters getting a canceled ticket for their match in Carson. Heart of LAFC on Twitter, which is a hub for LAFC supporters, podcast as well, tweeted out multiple LAFC 3252 members now posting the following, quote, just 48 hours before the derby and without any explanation, LA Galaxy front office has canceled hundreds of tickets for Friday's match versus LAFC. Many innocent fans and youth soccer clubs players are now left without a ticket. Pablo Maurer from The Athletic reached out to the Galaxy for comment, and he got a comment, and LA Galaxy spokesperson told Maurer, quote, a number of tickets were canceled due to safety and security concerns. A fraudulent amateur partner transferred tickets to 3252 in the LA Galaxy supporters section. Due to safety concerns and an inability to relocate these buyers, these tickets were refunded. And Maurer then followed up and said, what I gather from the Galaxy is that LAFC are allotted 300 away tickets for these rivalry games. LAFC supporters used a third party acting as a youth soccer club to try and purchase additional tickets and then transfer them to LAFC supporters. LA Galaxy refunded those tickets. A lot of people threw a lot of shade at the LA Galaxy on this one. If that's the way it broke down, then yeah, they handled it right, because you can't have LAFC supporters in the Galaxy supporter section, not with the incidents you've already seen in this, and you can't have that anywhere, but especially in this case. And if you try to get tickets to get in the building, and you go through it, and you're sitting, in general seating, cool. But when you do something like this, and you're trying to get tickets in their supporter section, acting as a youth soccer club, no, that's just not going to work. So that's one element of what's going on around El Tráfico. The other one,
oh,
you want to get into Zlatan?
Welcome to Zlatan.
Well, he had some things to say.
He did. When is he not?
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, the wonderful soccer commentators over at Deadspin with the headline, Zlatan Ibrahimovic ethers Carlos Vela. And I think they think it's cool. I don't. I think it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
The quote was about Carlos Vela because they asked him about it. Let me get to this. Herculez Gomez had an interview on ESPN FC with Zlatan, and he talked about the best player in Major League Soccer, and that Zlatan has said that he is that, and Herculez mentioned Carlos Vela with 19 goals and 12 assists, leading LAFC, who is leading MLS. I want to get Zlatan's exact quote. Zlatan said, by far, because it asked him if he's still the best player in the league. And Zlatan said, by far, because if he is in his prime, how old is he? Talking about Vela. And Gomez said Carlos Vela is 29. Zlatan then said, 29, he's playing in MLS and he's in his prime. When I was 29, where was I? And Gomez says, you were in Europe. And Ibrahimovic says, big difference, exactly. This stuff is just dumb. And it's a bad look for the league because then you get people like your wonderful experts on American soccer at Deadspin who were like, yay, this is cool. Yay, MLS sucks. Where was Carlos Vela playing before he came to LAFC? Last time I checked, it was Europe. Last time I checked, it was La Liga. Carlos Vela, I think the phrase would be, ain't no punk. And Zlatan, to say something like this.
He's a punk.
It's a punk move. It is. You got to back it up now in the match on Friday. And if you come out there and you lose again and you don't outplay Carlos Vela, there's going to be a lot of legitimate questions to you, and we'll see how it gets handled. I have no problem with Zlatan Ibrahimovic trash-talking, other players, whatever, except when he does it in a guy's face like he did to RSL, which was, kind of an embarrassment. But he wants to talk about how good he is, cool. He wants to talk about how he's better than every player in the league, cool. No, it's not even about backing it up, John, because he's backed it up. It's not that. You can talk about how good you are, and you can talk about how you're better than everybody else without trashing your employer. That's the problem, is when MLS brings in these guys and is trying to shake off the retirement league label, but then they come in and they trash the league. No, you don't need that in this league. You don't need that stuff. Zlatan sold a bunch of shirts, but what has he won for the LA Galaxy? We'll see if there's an answer to that at the end of the season.
Here's before we. Yeah.
He's performed. He's been very, very good. He has been among the best players in the league. He's ridiculous. He shouldn't be doing this at his age and after his knee basically exploded. He is. You got to give him credit, and you got to respect his abilities. I don't respect the way he treats the league, and I don't respect the way he talks about it.
I chose to come here because I said that one day I will play in America, and I will show them how to play the game.
Yep. That's
later in the interview.
That's the stuff you don't need. I'm sorry. That's the stuff that just doesn't help this league. But honestly, the thing is, I don't think it's helped the LA Galaxy a whole lot in the short term. And that's the more important thing, because if LA Galaxy are winning trophies, okay, different conversation. Is it worth it? Then that's a whole different conversation. Right now, I don't think there's really a good answer for is it worth it. I'd say no right now. And we'll see what happens. The Galaxy aren't exactly lighting it up at the moment.
All right. Twitters?
Yes.
Barnos Prime. Hashtag life tip. Don't continue to argue with a ref or physically encroach on his personal space. Once he's given you a caution, it won't end well for you. Signed, a referee of 10 years.
For sure. And I just want to reiterate this because, man, this has become a bigger talking point than I thought it would. Albert Ellis put himself in this position. 100%. He messed up. I still think Chris Penso could have gotten out of this without a red card. And I think in general at this level, referees want to get out of situations without a red card. But when you look back at the track record of Penso, he's a guy who doesn't really have that issue. He's a guy who doesn't really have that problem throwing early reds. And you got to know that going in. At least needed to manage it better. I'm really surprised that it's him who got into this situation, but it is on him. I still think Penso could have handled it better, too.
Then Bart says, I don't agree with the red because I think he could have allowed Ellis to be mad and just let him get over it. The yellow was warranted because Penso just talked to a Houston player for walking in front of Gazan during a goal kick. This was to end time wasting.
I want to say it was Ellis because you had the situation on that cross that Martinez, at the final touch, was off of him because Nagbe nearly put it in his own goal. Gazan couldn't get to the cross on the ground. And they thought it was going to be a corner, and it was overruled and ended up giving a goal kick. And I don't know if it was time wasting as much as it was Ellis still being frustrated. There could have been another one before that I'm not remembering at the moment. But, yeah. I think that if he had the ball being kicked away is an easy yellow, no problem, because you're delaying the restart. That's an easy one. There's no question about that. If he had given the red for kicking the ball at the AR, there would be no question about it for me, period, because that was risky. When you add it all up and say, okay, he's sent off, yeah, he's sent off. I think the actual bump shouldn't have resulted in the send-off. You could have gotten away with it, but you're walking on thin ice because of all of it adding up, and that's where you're at. Ellis has got to handle that better, and it hurt the team.
Eric Hunter, Gressel on the right, just takes advantage of his strengths so well. I feel like it has to be one of our lineup options going forward, at least when we can find a favorable matchup for that situation.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it's not cut and dried that, yes, this is it, done, because, as we talked about in hour number one, then how do you make the rest of the team fit? And you can, but you're going to leave pieces out. I think this team's going to play in different ways. I really don't think ultimately, and you might not get there by the end of this year. You might not be able to get there tactically at the end of this year, but I think ultimately this is going to be a team that will play 3-5-2, that will play 3-4-3, that will play 4-3-3, and every variation of a 4-3-3, 4-1-4-1, 4-2-3-1, yada yada. I think this will be a team that will play in all of those manners based off current form and based off the opponent. I really think that is the ultimate goal, is a team that is tactically flexible and has a lot of variety in the way they play. How soon you get there, that's hard to do in 6+ months when you've had the injuries that Atlanta's had. So we will see. But I think ultimately it's not going to be this is a 3-5-2 team and that's all they play. I don't think that works in the modern game anymore for top teams. I think you have to be able to exploit situations with the opponent to the fullest of its extent. And when you go back in the last 20 years or so, honestly, it was Jose Mourinho who really started that whole trend of, yes, we have our identity, but our identity needs to be able to bend to attack their left side because their left back is weak or they have a replacement or whatever. And we need to scout the opposition and match our team up to get the best out of this match and being a little more flexible. Now, I think over time he got away from that and got too rigid. But then Pep Guardiola and all the different managers that have come since that have that flexibility built in, they've taken that to another level. And I think ultimately that's where Atlanta will get to. But it takes time to get there because you are still building those variations.
ATO UTD fan number one. I don't know what it is about Wednesday night matches, but we always seem to get treated to a great time by Atlanta United on a work night. Hashtag I'm here for it.
Yeah, Wednesday matches are usually nuts. That's a good thing.
Tafka. LGP is right-footed. How comfortable is he as a right center back in a back three? I'd live to, but I imagine, as he says, I'd live to, but I think it's I'd love to. See how a Pogba, Robinson, LGP backline operates. Tell me that kind of passing from the back doesn't make you drool.
Yeah, it could. You gotta figure out what Florentine Pogba can give you on a regular basis. I really hope they can figure out how to get him right to where he can be a regular contributor. And I think physically, we've seen it with the twos this season, and I think you just see it with a lot of players with that kind of body type, that type of size and muscle. And you get lots of pulls, you get lots of tweaks, and it's hard to keep them healthy 90 minutes after 90 minutes after 90 minutes. And I hope you can figure that out, because the flashes you've seen from him are really, really good. It's just, can you get 90 minutes per game out of him? Right now, I don't think you can. So could LGP move over to the right? Yeah, I think he can. We've seen it from time to time. I believe we saw it with that permutation specifically. I think so. LGP is more flexible to move than Pogba would be, for example. He would move over to the right and be just fine.
Tafka. Looking at Transfermarkt, how has LGP's value not increased at all since his move from Argentina?
It's weird. I think us locally see LGP on a daily basis, and that's why, like the mistake in Seattle, for example, that's why it's such an anomaly. He's had more of those this season than he's had, I think, honestly, since early in 2017. But we see his excellence, and I have no problem saying that. We see it on a regular basis. And I think nationally they don't, and he's not a player that gets talked about enough. And I think he is a player that rubs people the wrong way sometimes. I think he's a player that plays on the edge. And he's a player that is completely fine being an instigator and getting under players' skin. I think he did on Albert Ellis. I think he absolutely did. He knew exactly what he was doing going down easy in that moment, because Ellis was already running hot. The engine's overheating, and LGP just exacerbates it. That's smart. But I think you get some people nationally who don't like that, and you're going to hype up other center backs around the league more. And I think the Transfermarkt valuations factor into it. Also, I think Transfermarkt is still struggling with what MLS players are truly valued at. And it's going to take more sales, I think, to set that market completely. Although the Almiron sale, the Davies sale, have started to set it at the top end. But for a player like LGP, and for players on Houston's roster like Manotas, like Ellis, those $5 to $15 million type of values, I don't think there's really a market set for them yet. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time.
Let's see. Eichmann. Miles got away with a tackle that should have been a PK. No VAR.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I was shocked that didn't go to VAR. Because, going in, Miles lunged in a really awkward manner, and I thought maybe live he got a touch on the ball. I don't know how much he got of the attacker is the element that might have saved him on it, because it was just such an awkward lunge across. I don't know if he necessarily...
Was it the Kyoto move?
Yes. Kyoto didn't move. It's Miles just lunging across him.
Right. And I think that Kyoto fell over him. And remembering that one, I think that Kyoto fell over.
That
but
would
not,
be a penalty.
But no, but it was more not because of what Miles did, but what Kyoto wanted to do. There was wasn't a whole lot of contact.
Oh, come on, John. That's a penalty. If he's lunging over and the player's on the ground in a manner where he didn't get the ball, he was reckless in doing it, and you fall over him, it's still a penalty.
To me, it seemed more of an intentional fall as opposed to the act by Miles.
Ooh. I have to thoroughly
there seemed to be some space when Miles went down and then Kyoto went over the top.
Well, there's a couple things I'll remind you of on that. One, there doesn't have to be contact for a foul to be called. Miles was pretty reckless in that lunge, and okay, then from now on, if players, try to avoid getting kicked, then you can't get the call. You got to take the contact. You got to get kicked. Got to potentially get the leg swept. All that type of stuff. I'm just surprised it wasn't looked at. That's the more baffling one to me. If you look at it and you don't call it, okay, I thought that definitely got to the level of an on-field review. I'm surprised that it wasn't. It was checked. We know everything gets checked. And maybe they decided, and I'd have to go back and see it again, maybe they decided that where the actual foul would have occurred would have been outside the 18, and then that's not something you can go to an on-field review on. Maybe. Not 100% sure, but maybe. I'm just surprised there wasn't more discussion about that because, he didn't get the ball, and even then it's still a little risky, but, that was a really awkward challenge. I thought Miles made a big mistake there that he ended up not getting punished for.
Yeah, Ike Man says, don't get me wrong, I'm glad, but it seems like Pro screwed that one up.
Well, not Pro, but the VAR, the video assistant referee, and the center ref, and I'd be curious to know what the conversation was and how it went because it definitely was talked about. It had to be. But I was surprised that it wasn't even held up longer to be looked at more because there wasn't much of a delay to restart play after the stoppage following that.
Going through, Michael Valverde says, Atlanta United really broke through the bunker last night. Emerson Hyndman had a huge hand in that. What a solid midseason pickup. Yeah,
Hyndman was really good. Hyndman's a good fit for this system, and he's going to push guys out of the time. He's going to get opportunities because he's got the skill set to perfectly match the way this team wants to play. He's comfortable on the ball, like Darlington Nagbe. He gives you maybe a little more range. I think he's a little more maybe athletic, a little scrappier. Better, maybe natural defender, and I think he's really got a good bit of swagger inside the final third that Nagbe at times doesn't have. So
saw that last night.
Yeah, Hyndman gives you a lot. I think he's a really good fit, and I think he's a player who can play with Nagbe, but he's also a player that can play with Remedi or Lorenowitz or play with a true playmaker like a Barco or a Pitti or a Gressel centrally. I think Hyndman's a very adaptable player, and he's a great fit for this group.
Vine City FC says that they should have shown the red card last night as the new standard of practice. You touch the referee and you're out.
If that's the way you want to do it, again, then Franco Escobar should have been sent off against Chicago. But if that's the bar, that's the bar, and that's fine. I'm okay if referees will use common sense and judgment, especially early in matches in that, because I don't think Albert Ellis was intending to chest bump the referee. I just didn't get the intent out of that as much as I've seen in other cases. So I would have given him the leeway at that point, but we also don't know what was said. The red was given for the bump, according to Pro, because I checked. If there was extra language on top of it, or if it's all just a kind of a lump sum of everything that happened, that's fine, and I'm not really going to dispute it. I felt like the ball being kicked at the AR was the more obvious red card offense than the inadvertent contact. I've sat on disciplinary and protest committees at the youth level and the adult level in the state of Georgia. Sometimes committees like that and referees can get very stuck on black and white, the language of it. I'm not a huge fan of that at times. I think for the referee, they have a little leeway here, and I would have liked to have seen him use it more for the sake of the 90 minutes, just for the game. But, hey, it benefited Atlanta United, and with all the bad luck Atlanta's had at times this season when it comes to referees, it's good to get a fortunate call go your way. And it's not one that you can really – you're not going to get it overturned on appeal. That's the point that I hope that at least my take on it is clear, is that the red is justified. I don't like it, and I wish you had been able to get away from it early and have the 90-minute match and see how it would have played out. But the red's justified. You can easily go red there. That's the thing about refereeing, is that it's so difficult to do it if all we're going to talk about is black and white, contact, red card, no question, done, move on. Because you're always going to get a scenario where, well, wait a minute, he didn't mean to bump the referee. He was trying to do this, or the referee walked into him, or whatever. And it's, nope, black and white, red card, boom. I think the way this game plays out often, you're dealing in shades of gray, not black and white. And I hope that can be still a part of the game. And with VAR involved, look, it's less gray. We talked about it all summer with the Women's World Cup especially. There's far less gray in the game now than there used to be, because video takes the gray out of it and makes it black and white. This didn't involve that. I do hope there's still elements of judgment and discretion used by referees. This was one where I think you could have, but it's not something you're going to get overturned, so you can't really argue it either.
Clayton Poss wants to know, how much stock do we put in Gressel's performance against the 10-man Houston team? Played great. I'd much rather him out wide than in the middle, but if the team's at full strength, is he at that role in a 4-3-3?
That's the point we don't know. Well, in a 4-3-3, it's different than a 3-5-2. Let's start with the 3-5-2 that he played in last night. We don't know how Houston would have looked with Tommy McNamara in their 4-3-3 attacking Atlanta's 3-5-2. Houston was set up a little more, at least on paper, as a 4-4-1-1, but McNamara and Hairston still would have challenged Pereira on one side and Gressel on the other. The questions about Gressel in a 3-5-2 in that role are defensive. I think we know what he can do going forward. We know the service he can give you from the right side. Last night, when you're dealing with a lot of those crosses where you're not really being contested, you're going to pick some out because Gressel's a quality player. We all know that. He had 10 open play crosses, which is a very high number for a player in a match. It's because Houston couldn't step out to defend him on a regular basis. Would that have happened 11v11? That's the thing we don't know. Against teams that have a strong attacking threat on that side, I worry more about Gressel in that role. Against teams where Gressel can be the stronger attacking player on that side, I love him in that role. I do want to remind everyone that last season, down the stretch, when you went 3-5-2, Gressel was central as more of an 8, not as a right wing back. That was Franco Escobar. That was not by accident. That was because Escobar's the better defender of the two. But he still gave you a lot going forward. Very different going forward, but he still gave you going forward. And ultimately, that'll be the question. If you go 3-5-2 in the long run and everyone is healthy, where's Franco Escobar fit?
Caleb. Perspective here.
Skype is fighting John. Let's try that again. Caleb Cook.
Yeah. And Kevin from Charlotte, both calling for perspective, considering it was a 10-man Houston side.
I think we've given that. I mean, I don't think we have to run that into the ground. We've covered that for sure this morning, and I agree. You can't take a whole lot out of it tactically, and that was, I think, my initial thought on the full-time report last night was you can take individual performances out, you can take the vibe, the mood out, which are very good coming out of this. Tactically, it's really hard because you've got about 6 minutes to judge.
And Caleb also says that he likes what Heineman has provided, like his intensity. Way to go, Nagby.
Yeah, I love that combination because I do think Heineman can replace Nagby in some matches, but he also can play with him, and that's the sign of a great player. Is Heineman can adapt. He can go forward more and be more of a 10. He can be more of a defensive 8. I think he could play a 6 if he had to. That's a great player to have in the system that is an adaptable system in the long run. I said it when the deal was rumored and when it was announced. Emerson Heineman is going to be a big part of this team, not just in the long run. And obviously, I think with the terms of the deal to get him here, the thought is long-term and long run. Short-term, he's a player who can help you win trophies this year.
Ricky Ricardo says he really liked the work rate from Brandon Vasquez, developing really well, excited for his future. Crazy we got him for almost nothing. # front office is undefeated.
Yeah, crazy that we almost forgot about him, too. And honestly, if you go back and look at his performances with Atlanta United, too, earlier this season, he wasn't playing well. He wasn't. And you get the opportunity in the Open Cup this year, coming in a match where you're 1-0 down to Charleston in a behind closed doors, crazy day, weird match, and he steps up and he gives you something special. And then, hey, let's ride the hot hand. Then he gives you more special things in Columbus. And then, hey, we've got something here. Joseph.
Open Cup hero Brandon Vasquez.
Joseph not going to be here for Toronto. Going into the break, it was Romario Williams was going to play those games. Once he wasn't picked for the Jamaican team, Romario Williams will play in Toronto. That was the idea. Everybody thought that. Brandon Vasquez, due to his own hard work and finding that form again, and a lot of it is that work off the ball, he stepped up, he grabbed that spot with both hands, and he's run with it. And he was very good last night because he gave you a lot of that variation. Sometimes he was a true number 9 as a target. Sometimes he was drifting out wide to the right. Sometimes he was dropping into the midfield. His movement off the ball was really, really good. And I thought he did a good job of not making the same movement off the ball as Joseph. There's only one time where they kind of made the same run and occupied the same space. That's pretty good considering that's the first 90 minutes they played together.
Nathan Pugh, the best thing of New England playing better, one more excellent chance that Orlando stays where they belong, out of the playoffs.
We'll see how Orlando does tonight in Portland. That's a really difficult one for them. The other match tonight, we've talked about it, DC going to Cincinnati. Two good games, both national TV, both ESPN, I believe, and a good doubleheader of MLS tonight to keep an eye on. And then Friday you get El Tráfico, and I would be willing to bet that the Zlatan Ibrahimovic comments are going to get under the skin of LAFC. Bob Bradley should be talking to the media today. I wonder if he'll address it. I don't think Vela will.
What the 3252 are going to say.
Well, we'll see how many of them are in the building. 300 tickets, and they tried to get more, and they tried through underhanded means to get more. So, yeah, it's craziness. We'll see how it goes down. 3 really fun matches over the next couple of days if you follow the rest of the league. And I hope you are, because I think it puts more of what Atlanta United does in context if you know the storylines from around the league. That's why we try to spend a good bit of time on it. And tomorrow we will catch you up on what happens tonight, and we'll get you set for El Tráfico. Big weekend of MLS.
Yep, couple more before we go. Jim Lapp, my read on the Penso decisions, yellow was really orange for kicking the ball toward the AR. It would have been a red if it had hit the AR, and when Elise makes contact with Penso, it was finished. I was surprised, but I understand.
I would not change the color of the card, and I think you're right, Jim, in the way that it was handled. But I would not change the color of the card because Albert Ellis had bad aim. You're kicking the ball at the assistant referee. It's the same as hitting the referee to me. I don't give somebody less of a penalty if they throw a punch and miss. You know what I mean? So I do think that's the way it played out, though. I think that because it didn't hit him, okay, we're not going to give the red here. If he had just turned around and given a straight red and pointed for kicking at the AR, I wouldn't have argued it at all. There's nothing you can argue that one. The fact that he didn't hit him and he missed him that time, well, okay, maybe he gets a little bit of leeway. But then you're on thin ice and everything else adds up. That's why, and it sounds like nothing, but that's why initially I thought it was yellow, 2 yellows, red. And if that had been the way it ruled, I would have had less of an issue with it. But yellow, straight red for the, in my mind, inadvertent bump, you get to the same place, but it feels different to me. I think he probably should have gone yellow, red. or straight red on the kick at the referee, the kick at the AR. Kicking the ball at the AR, not kicking at him physically.
Daniel Price with some prize pick questions.
Uh-oh.
Anybody also says that Carlos Hill was so over last night you had to beat 3. He was at 20.
Should have got bonus points.
Daniel wants to know how you feel about the under on Nani and the over on Rooney.
Yeah, tonight over at Prize Picks, Wayne Rooney 6.5, Diego Valeri 5.5, Nani 7, and they've already got El Trafico up for a few players. Zlatan's on an 8, Vela's on 11, Diamande 6.5, Diego Rossi 7. Oh, none of those really jump out in a good way to me as something like, ooh, that's a play. Vela maybe on the under just because 11's such a big number. Anytime you get into double digits, I'm going to tend to go under on a Prize Picks play. Nani at 7 feels high. I could be led down the road of an under on him. I could go over on Valeri, but I don't love those. Like, those don't immediately jump out to me. Rooney at 6.5 I do kind of like. But the only one that I really like as a play on the board right now is Vela on the under. That's the only one that grabs my attention. The others are tough numbers. They're tough ones to call. So I'm probably a little conservative when it comes to my gut reaction on the Prize Picks plays as well. So your mileage may vary, so that's okay. But go to myprizepicks.com. If you haven't signed up already, you can use the code SDH when you sign up. You get 25% of your initial deposit matched up to getting $1,000 in match. You get a free $25 two-pick play that if you get half of it right on that play, on that free roll, you get $10 back. So it's kind of a no-brainer if you're looking for daily fantasy involving MLS, but it also involves the Open, which is going on right now. It involves tennis. It involves the CFL, the Canadian Football League. If you're worried about your Hamilton Tiger Cats, they will help you deal with Hamilton Tiger Cats daily fantasy. It's crazy. Baseball, esports, all of it. It's there. MyPrizePicks.com or on the app, Android, iOS. Both available. Highly recommended. It's a lot of fun, especially when Carlos Hill is at a 3 and you can take the over and he gets 20 points.
And you can also download the Soccer Down Here app as well on iOS and Android.
Yes, but we don't match any deposits because we don't take deposits on the Soccer Down Here app.
Last one on the board before we go. Joe Bost, read the red. Didn't the manager say they had a rough outing with this ref another time? They knew that going in. Use your brain. #AE.
That's easy to say, Joe. But when you are running hot in front of 40,000 people yelling and you've had a couple chances in the first 6 minutes and you've given up a couple chances in the 6 minutes, your brain goes out the window. It does. I mean, it's easy to say it in hindsight, but, man, emotions will get the best of you in these games, in these moments. I was surprised that it was Ellis who had the emotions get away from him. He generally is not that player. There's probably 5 or 6 other guys on the Dynamo starting 11 that I would have picked to get that type of red card before Albert Ellis. So it's easy to say. It's hard to do. Pinso and his history with the Dynamo, yeah. You give him 3 reds in a game last August, and I vaguely remember that without seeing the highlights. I vaguely remember being like, oh, boy, that game got out of hand, and I think maybe the referee had a hand in it. You remember those things, and it does get under your skin a little bit. And you can warn, you can say, hey, this is that guy again, don't say anything. But then when something happens in the game, you're like, hey, it's that guy again. He screwed us last time. Rawr. And it happens.
Rawr.
Yeah, I don't think Ellie said rawr. I don't think he turned full pirate. He probably had a few other things to say. And honestly, I don't know how much he had to say. It didn't look like he was saying a lot. That's what was so weird about it. Like, that's why I would have had more discretion about it. But, again, just me. He put himself in the spot. Nothing you can do to overturn it. That one's not getting appealed. He's going to be suspended for the game in Toronto. Missed 84 minutes here. Atlanta took full advantage as they needed to, and they get a 5-0 win. And they get a really good vibe going into D.C. coming to town on Sunday. D.C. plays tonight in Cincinnati. We'll talk about that tomorrow morning. We'll talk about what Atlanta has to do to get 3 points against D.C. We'll talk about El Tráfico. We'll talk about the rest of the MLS weekend. You're getting into the business portion of the season right now, and all these games matter, and we'll try to get you set for the weekend on tomorrow morning's show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for all of the reactions this morning. We really, really appreciate it. We'll be back at 9 a.m. on Friday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.